You know that feeling when you're standing in a room full of people, but you might as well be invisible? That's exactly where I found myself tonight, nursing a whiskey that tasted like disappointment at my wife Sarah's company dinner. The Hilton ballroom was all glitz and glamour. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen. Waiters in bow ties wove between conversations about quarterly reports and market projections. Everyone was dressed to impress, especially my wife Sarah, who looked absolutely stunning in an emerald green dress that hugged her curves just right. She was in her element, laughing with her colleagues, gesturing animatedly as she told a story about landing a big client. I watched her from across our table, feeling like a fish out of water among all these corporate sharks. These weren't my people. I wasn't even sure they were Sarah's people, but she seemed to fit in seamlessly with their world of power suits and profit margins. David Sterling's voice cut through my thoughts like nails on a chalkboard. David, Sarah's coworker, was the biggest pain in my ass at these events. The guy was all teeth and hair gel, the kind of dude who probably practiced his smile in the mirror every morning. He was holding his champagne glass high, swaying slightly. "Come on over here, buddy," he called out. I forced a smile and walked over to where he was standing with a small crowd, including Arthur Granger, looking distinguished in his expensive suit. Sarah appeared at my side, slipping her arm through mine with that practiced corporate wife smile she'd perfected over the years. "So, Mark," David continued, his voice getting louder, "what's it like being married to our rising star here? Must be nice having a sugar mama, huh?" A few people chuckled. I kept my expression neutral. This wasn't the first time David had taken shots at me. "I mean, seriously though," David pressed on, enjoying his audience. "What do you even do all day while Sarah's out here crushing it? Play video games? Watch Netflix?" More laughter rippled through the group. I felt Sarah's grip tighten on my arm. But when I glanced at her, she wasn't looking at me with concern. She was smiling, that same practiced smile, as if this was all harmless fun. "David," Arthur interjected with a diplomatic chuckle, "maybe we should—" No, it's fine," David waved him off. "I'm genuinely curious. Mark seems like a nice enough guy, but let's be real here." He turned to face me directly, his eyes glassy. "What's it like being a loser? Must be strange having your wife pay all the bills, right?" The words hit me like a slap. The entire table went quiet for a heartbeat, then erupted in laughter. Even some people from neighboring tables turned to see what was so funny. And there, right next to me, was Sarah, laughing along with them, not uncomfortably, but genuinely amused. Something cold settled in my chest. After 15 years of marriage, she was laughing at me being called a loser in front of everyone. Then something shifted inside me. I smiled, not the forced smile from before, but a genuine one that probably looked a little scary. The laughter died down as people noticed my expression. "You know what, David?" I said, my voice calm and steady. "You're absolutely right. It must seem pretty strange from where you're sitting." I turned to Arthur Granger, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Arthur," I continued, "how does it feel to know that this loser owns 90% of your company?" The silence that followed was absolute. Arthur's face went white as a sheet. Sarah's arm fell away from mine as she stared at me, her mouth slightly open. David's stupid grin melted away. "What?" Sarah whispered. I looked around the table at the people who had been laughing seconds ago. "Did I stutter?" I asked calmly. "Orion Systems. Remember that little tech startup that merged with Nexora 5 years ago? The one that saved this company from bankruptcy? Yeah, that was mine. Still is, actually." Sarah's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor, red wine spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. The sound broke the spell, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. But I was done. I straightened my tie, took one last look at my wife's stunned face, and walked away. The hotel's marble floors echoed with each step I took toward the exit.
I could feel dozens of eyes burning into my back. I was almost to the revolving doors when I heard the rapid click-clack of heels behind me. "Mark! Mark, wait!" Sarah's voice was sharp with panic. I didn't slow down. "Mark, damn it, stop!" She grabbed my arm, spinning me around. She looked like she'd seen a ghost, her makeup smudged and her emerald dress wrinkled. "What the hell do you mean you own the company?" she demanded, breathing hard. "You really don't know, do you?" I asked, studying her face. "You honestly have no clue who you married? Don't be cryptic with me right now. Explain how you can possibly own 90% of Nexora when you've been unemployed for the past 3 years. Unemployed? The word hit me like a punch. That's what you think I've been doing? Sitting around while you bring home the bacon? Well, what else would you call it? She shot back. You haven't had a real job since you sold that little software company. That little software company, I interrupted, was Orion Systems. And I didn't just sell it, I merged it with a failing tech firm called Nexora Corporation. Ring any bells? The color drained from her face as the pieces clicked together. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Try hundreds of millions," I corrected. "And it is worth that much, present tense, because I never sold my shares. I just stepped back and let Arthur run the show while I focused on other things." "Other things like what?"
"Like being your husband," I said simply. "Like cooking dinner every night while you worked late. Like handling all the financial details you never wanted to deal with. Like supporting your career while everyone assumed I was a deadbeat." She stared at me, trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the reality standing in front of her. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" she asked finally. "Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I own," I replied. "I wanted to know that if I lost everything tomorrow, you'd still want to be married to me. But the moment people thought I had nothing, they treated me like I was nothing, including you." The truth hung in the air between us. She opened her mouth to protest, but we both knew it was true. She had laughed. "I didn't know," she said weakly. "You didn't want to know," I corrected. "They'd all forgotten who I was. But I never forgot. I never forgot that Arthur Granger came to me 15 years ago, hat in hand, begging me to save his company. I never forgot that every paycheck you've ever gotten from Nexora was technically coming from me." Her legs seemed to give out, and she grabbed a pillar for support. "So what happens now?" she whispered. "Now," I said, "I stop being the invisible man. I stop letting people think I'm some kind of joke. And maybe, just maybe, I remind everyone at Nexora exactly who's been signing their paychecks all these years." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving my wife standing alone in the hotel lobby, finally understanding that the man she'd married wasn't who she thought he was at all. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by something colder and more focused. I walked straight to my home office, the room Sarah rarely entered, the one she called my man cave. Behind a false panel in the bookshelf was a fireproof safe. I pulled out a thick folder labeled Nexora Holdings and spread its contents across my desk. The original merger documents were yellowed, but Arthur's signature was still bold. I remembered the day he'd sat in this office, sweating through his suit as he begged me to save his failing company. I'd been generous. 90% ownership for me, with full voting rights. Arthur kept his CEO title and a salary. Everyone won, especially me. My shares were held in a blind trust, my identity protected. Only Arthur and a handful of lawyers knew the truth. I picked up the trust documents and found the clause. The beneficial owner retains the right to assume direct control of all holdings upon written notice. The question was, did I want to? But tonight had changed everything. I'd been humiliated by people who owed their livelihoods to my generosity. David had called me a loser while cashing my checks. Sarah had laughed. Arthur had stood by and let it happen. I called my lawyer, Marcus Trent. Marcus, I need you to prepare some documents. I want a full financial audit of Nexora's executive compensation, credit card usage, and any conflicts of interest. And schedule a meeting with the board. It's time they met their largest shareholder. Jordan, are you sure? Once you step out, there's no going back. I've been invisible for too long, Marcus. It's time to remind people who they're dealing with. After I hung up, I sat back in my chair. Tomorrow, the corporate world that had forgotten about Mark Riven was about to get a very rude awakening. I woke up the next morning to the sound of Sarah's heels clicking upstairs, her usual pre-work routine in full swing. I stayed in bed, listening to her talk on the phone about her schedule, unaware that every decision she made at work ultimately flowed through me. When I entered the kitchen, she was in her power suit, scrolling through emails. "Morning," she said, not looking up. Her voice was carefully neutral. "Morning," I replied, pouring coffee. "Jordan, about last night," she began. "Don't," I cut her off gently. "We don't need to make it a big thing. They were just joking around. I get it." Relief washed over her face. "They were just joking. You know how David gets. He doesn't mean anything by it." "Of course not," I agreed. "No harm, no foul." "Right," she said, looking relieved. "I'm glad you're not making a big deal out of it." She kissed my cheek. "I'll be late tonight, working on the Morrison account." "I won't wait up," I said. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and typed an email to Arthur Granger. "Arthur, I need a full breakdown of executive compensation, expense accounts, and any conflicts of interest among senior staff. End of business today. Thanks, Mark Riven." I hit send. My phone rang minutes later. "Marcus, I've been up all night. The audit request is ironclad. The board meeting is scheduled for Thursday. But Jordan, once I send this, everyone will know." "Good," I said. "I'm tired of being anonymous." "There's something else," Marcus continued. "David Sterling has been steering contracts to his cousin's company, and several executives have been misusing corporate cards. Arthur's been loose with oversight. Send everything, Marcus. It's time to shake things up." By noon, I was ready. I emailed Margaret Woo, Nexora's brilliant and overlooked VP of Engineering. "Margaret, you don't know me, but I've been following your work. I think you're exactly the kind of leader the company needs. We should talk soon. Best, Mark Riven." I hit send and waited for the chaos to begin. The corporate rumor mill worked fast. By 10 a.m., Marcus texted, "David Sterling just got escorted out, suspended." My phone buzzed with a call from Sarah. I let it go to voicemail. "Mark, what the hell is happening? David got fired. People are freaking out. Call me back." I texted back, "Sounds like a typical Tuesday. I'm sure it's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The machine was in motion. By 5 p.m., Arthur had delivered the financial records. They were worse than I'd expected. Obscene bonuses, luxury retreats, and rampant nepotism. The quiet Mark Riven was gone. Thursday morning, I stood in front of my mirror in a charcoal gray Armani suit I hadn't worn in years. Marcus met me in the parking garage of Nexora headquarters. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready for 15 years," I replied. Arthur was pacing outside the boardroom. When he saw me, his face went white. "Mark," he said, extending a clammy hand, "it's been too long." "You look well, Arthur," I replied. "I bet you never thought you'd see me here again." "Well, you're always welcome here. This is you're obviously a valued, my company," I finished for him. "You can say it." The boardroom doors opened. 5 board members looked confused and annoyed. "Gentlemen," Arthur announced, "I'd like you to meet Mark Riven." Silence. Then recognition dawned. "Wait," said Patricia Hensley, one of the board members. "Mark Riven? As in Orion Systems?" "The very same," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Nice to finally meet you in person." Panic ensued. I opened my briefcase and spread the financial documents across the table. "This is what I've been paying for," I said, my voice calm but edged. "Executives using corporate cards for family vacations. Hiring friends over qualified candidates. A culture that mocks and belittles without consequence." "These are serious allegations, Mr. Riven," Patricia said. "They're all accurate," I assured her. "When you think the boss is never watching, you get sloppy." Arthur was sweating. "Mark, if there have been irregularities, we can address them through proper channels." "The proper channel," I interrupted, "is me taking control of the company I've owned all along." I pulled out the final document. "Effective immediately, I'm exercising my right as majority shareholder to assume direct operational oversight. Arthur, your resignation is accepted immediately." The room erupted, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. David Sterling's termination stands. There will be other changes, starting with a complete overhaul of our executive team and corporate culture." I stood and walked to the window. I've spent 15 years watching this company from the shadows. I've seen how you treat people when you think no one important is watching. Well, someone important was always watching. I turned back to them. "Now we rebuild this place from the ground up, with respect, integrity, and accountability." I gathered my documents. "Oh, and Arthur, clear out your office by the end of the day. Security will escort you out." As I walked toward the door, chaos erupted behind me. The emergency board vote took place at 6:47 p.m. Arthur's resignation was accepted unanimously. David's termination was made permanent. Then I dropped the bombshell. "I'm nominating Margaret Woo for the position of Chief Executive Officer." Silence. "Margaret Woo from engineering," Robert Chin spluttered. "She's never held an executive position." "Because this company has spent 15 years promoting people based on who they play golf with," I replied. "Margaret gets the job." Another vote. Another unanimous result. Margaret was called to the boardroom, arriving in her work clothes, looking completely out of place. When I told her she was the new CEO, her eyes lit up with a fire I hadn't seen in years. "I want you to run this place with respect," I told her. "Respect for employees, for clients, and for doing good work." As I stood to leave, I saw Sarah standing in the hallway, her face pale. She wasn't looking at me with confusion or anger anymore, but with something that might have been respect or fear. I walked past her without a word. I made it 3 steps through our front door that evening before Sarah exploded. "You embarrassed me!" she screamed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Everyone thinks I'm an idiot. Margaret Woo is my boss now." "About as humiliating as having your coworkers call your husband a loser while you laugh along," I said calmly. She stopped mid-stride. "That's not. I didn't. It was just harmless office banter." "Harmless?" I repeated. "David calling me unemployed was harmless? Him asking what it's like to be a loser was harmless? You laughing when he said it must be strange having your wife pay the bills? That was all just harmless fun?" "I laughed because it was awkward. What was I supposed to do? Cause a scene?" "You were supposed to defend your husband," I said quietly. "You were supposed to act like you actually knew who you married." "But I didn't know," she wailed, the truth finally pouring out. "You never said anything. I thought you were just retired. I thought I was the breadwinner." "You thought I was a kept man," I finished. "And that was fine with you as long as nobody said it out loud." She collapsed onto the couch. "I never thought of you that way." "Sarah, you introduced me as someone who used to work in tech. You bought me a mug that says world's okayest husband. Those weren't jokes. They were signs of how you really saw me. And the moment David said out loud what you'd been thinking, you laughed because you thought it was true." She cried softly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I said.
"What happens now?" she whispered. "Now you learn who you're really married to," I said, "and I figure out if I still want to be married to you." The following weeks at Nexora felt like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Margaret was a natural leader. She implemented real open-door policies, held transparent meetings, and began cleaning house. The toxic culture evaporated. Morale soared. David's lawsuit fizzled out. He settled quietly and disappeared. Sarah took a leave of absence. "I need time to process everything," she said. "I need to figure out who I am if I'm not climbing the corporate ladder at Nexora." I didn't argue. It was for the best. The real game changer was the foundation I established, the Mark Riven Foundation for Engineering Education, providing scholarships and mentorship for underprivileged kids. For the first time, I put my name and my story behind something that mattered. 3 months later, I was back in the same Hilton ballroom for a corporate awards night Margaret had organized. Everything was different. "Ladies and gentlemen," Margaret announced from the podium, "please welcome Mark Riven, the man who believed in Nexora before anyone else did." The applause was genuine and warm, a world away from the mocking laughter of months before. I walked to the front, passing employees who now knew exactly who I was. Sarah sat quietly in the third row. We were still married, but everything had shifted. She had started therapy and was volunteering at the foundation. Maybe it was too late for us. Maybe it was just in time. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. 3 months ago, some of you learned something that surprised you about me. But the real surprise isn't that I own this company. The real surprise is what we've built together since then. I gestured to Margaret. Under her leadership, we've remembered what it means to solve problems. We've created a place where good ideas matter more than good connections, and where respect isn't just a buzzword. The foundation had funded its first class of scholarship recipients, bright kids with incredible promise. As I looked around the ballroom, I realized the sweetest revenge wasn't about punishment. It was about building something better than what came before. The laughter had finally stopped, replaced by something infinitely more valuable. A legacy worth leaving behind.